Shankar Mishra in the Air India urination case. Bail granted by Additional Sessions Judge Harjot Singh Bhalla is what we've been given to understand. This is a new development in this case, with the matter still being investigated. Shankar Mishra, the man who urinated on a senior citizen while on board an Air India aircraft, has now got bail in this case. A Delhi court has granted bail to Shankar Mishra, accused of urinating on a senior citizen while on board an Air India aircraft. A day ahead of the union budget, opposition parties have attacked President Murmu. Politics has erupted over President's customary address to the joint session of Parliament ahead of the budget session. Opposition parties also, in fact, boycotted the session, boycotted the speech of the President. AAP has called the speech a bundle of lies prepared by the central government. BJP has hit out at the opposition for disrespecting the centre and for boycotting the President's speech. The economic survey presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Survey has highlighted that the country's unemployment rate fell from 8.3% in July-September 2019 to 7.2% in July-September 2022. And also the share of self-employment has witnessed a steep hike in both rural and urban areas. The survey provides a blueprint for the nation's economy. The budget session that started today will culminate on the 6th of April. The Karnataka government has formed a committee in order to announce Tulu language as the second official language of Karnataka. With just 3 months left for the Karnataka Assembly polls, the Bombay government has constituted a committee to recognize Tulu as the second official language of the state. The committee, headed by academician Mohan Alva, has been formed to study the demand for and make recommendations to accord official language status to Tulu in Karnataka. After the UK and Australia, a prominent Hindu temple has now been targeted with anti-India graffiti in Brampton in Canada. Condemning the act of vandalism at the Gauri Shankar Mandir, the Indian Consulate General in Toronto said the defacing of the temple has deeply hurt the sentiments of the Indian community in Canada. Miscreants painted anti-India and pro-Khalistani slogans on the temple walls. Canadian authorities are currently investigating this case.
Ramesh, the arduous yatra is over, Kanyakumari to Kashmir. What are the three big benefits you think this yatra has actually given your party today?
Well, Rajdeep, don't reduce the yatra to an event. We are not event managers. The Bharat Jodo Yatra is a movement, and it's a long-term movement and it's an ideological movement. But in terms of short-term gains, if you're asking me that question, I think first and foremost, we have demonstrated a collective sense of purpose, a collective sense of solidarity in the Congress party organization. It has been enthused beyond imagination, and the younger generation of congressmen and congresswomen have really put their heart and soul together to make this yatra a grand success. So I think a revival and rejuvenation of the Congress is certainly one very big gain. The second big gain, of course, is the fact that the real Mr. Rahul Gandhi, free from the social media insults and distortions of his image that have taken place over the last 8 years, has emerged and is visible to the people of the country. And the third big gain is that the yatra, and Mr. Gandhi particularly, has highlighted through the yatra the fact that we are now in an ideological battle with the RSS and the BJP, the fact that we are fighting against economic inequalities, against social polarization, and against political dictatorship. I think these are the issues that he has been able to highlight through the length of this 136-day, 4,000-kilometer yatra. But as he himself said this afternoon in Srinagar, this yatra was carried out by the Congress party. Congressmen and women were involved in the yatra, but he did this yatra not for the party per se, but for the country, to bring the country together, a fractured country, the partition of the minds, so to speak, that we have today because of social polarization. So I think these are some of the big gains in the Bharat Jodo Yatra.
But the fact is, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, you are a political party and Rahul Gandhi is a politician. So there will be question naturally raised about whether this yatra has brought you any political benefits. Even today in Srinagar, we didn't see many of the opposition parties that you had invited even being there along with Rahul Gandhi as a show of solidarity. So the question arises, will this make the Congress more electorally viable? Will it make it a magnet for opposition unity? None of those questions seem to have been addressed by the yatra.
These are questions in your mind, Rajdeep, and these are questions in the minds of a large army of armchair commentators who are prepared to write off the Congress party.
This was the culmination of the Bharat Jodo Yatra in Srinagar on Monday. The journey of reinvention has seen many images, many faces of Rahul Gandhi. When he set out on the 4,000-kilometer yatra, a clean-shaven Rahul was the man on a mission. To unite the country was the stated agenda, but to tide over upcoming elections was the bigger goal. That goal required political muscle, so all Congress leaders put their weight behind the Gandhi heir. If the aim of the yatra was to showcase Rahul as a man fit to take on Modi in 2024, it was also to showcase his human side, the people connect, the one loved by kids and youth alike. A family man, a doting son and a brother. An animal lover, a man who could walk with Aam Aadmi and the Khas Aadmi alike. A man of faith, a Shiv Bhakt, a secular face. As the yatra continued, the beard started to grow. The look changed, but the white t-shirt remained, even in the biting Delhi cold. But then a jacket was added, later a cap, and finally a firan. Whether these viral images translate into viral votes is something India will be waiting for and watching. Bureau Report, India Today.
It is often said, when women are empowered, whole society benefits. A group of women working for Shiv Shakti Foundation in Raisin town of Madhya Pradesh are proof of that.
सर्वप्रथम तो हमारा जो संगठन है उसका नाम शिव शक्ति फाउंडेशन है, जिसके माध्यम से हमारा एक ही मात्र उद्देश्य है समाज सेवा, जिसमें हमारे द्वारा नेकी की दीवार का कार्यक्रम स्टार्ट किया गया है। दूसरा आपका नर्मदा सफाई अभियान हमारे यहाँ प्रत्येक रविवार को आयोजित किया जाता है।
The group works on multiple fronts. They donate clothes to school students so that they can fight the bitter cold wave.
शिव शक्ति फाउंडेशन के द्वारा मुझे मिला है, स्वेटर मिली है आज। तो मेरे पास स्वेटर नहीं थी, तो मैम ने मुझे स्वेटर दी है आज, और मुझे नहीं इन सब लोगों को दी है।
They motivate other citizens to join social work.
हम ये सोचते हैं कि अगर हमसे हो सके जितनी मदद हो पा रही है हम उतनी मदद करें और लोग इसमें सहयोग करें और सभी की मदद हो सके और सभी हमें सपोर्ट करें.
Every Sunday, they head towards the Narmada river to clean it. And they even help the traffic police.
आज बहुत अच्छा लगा कि हमारे शक्ति फाउंडेशन पूरा परिवार आया हुआ है और हम लोग हर रविवार आएंगे और 11 बजे से 2 बजे तक हम लोग 3 घंटे का समय इधर पर बिताएंगे और हम आप सभी से निवेदन करते हैं आप सभी आएँ और इधर पर गंदगी ना करें और हमारा सहयोग दें. हम सहयोग की आपसे अपेक्षा करते हैं.
These women from Resin want to set a new example for women empowerment. Bureau Report, India Today.
Adani Enterprises FPO gathers momentum, gets fully subscribed. Non-institutional investors' portion booked 3.26 times. Economic survey tabled ahead of budget 2023. India remains the fastest growing economy amid global slump. Economy has gained what it lost during COVID. Ahead of budget session in Parliament, President Murmu addresses both houses, Lord's government schemes, hails Nari Shakti in India.
आज की हमारी बहनें और बेटियां उत्कल भारतीय के सपनों के अनुरूप विश्व स्तर पर अपनी कीर्ति पताका लहरा रहे हैं.
Politics over budget session. BRS and AAP boycott presidential address. AAP calls President Murmu puppet of Prime Minister Modi.
उन्हें राष्ट्रपति के अभिभाषण का बहिष्कार किया है और राष्ट्रपति का अभिभाषण वैसे भी सरकार के लिखे हुए झूठ का एक पुलिंदा होता है.
Prime Minister Modi hails President Murmu amid opposition's puppet attack, calls on opposition to debate and not just disrupt.
राष्ट्रपति जी का भाषण भारत के संविधान का गौरव है, भारत की संसदीय प्रणाली का गौरव है.
Big statement by Andhra CM Jagan Reddy announces Visakhapatnam to be the new capital of Andhra, says we'll move to Vizag soon.
Here I am to invite you to Visakhapatnam, which is going to be our capital. I myself would also be shifting over to Visakhapatnam in the months to come as well.
And in a big relief to the Adani Group, the Adani Enterprises FPO, or follow-up public offer of 20,000 crore rupees, has been fully subscribed on the final day of bidding.
Absolutely, Abha, and what a big relief for Adani Enterprises. In fact, the entire group, a lot was riding on the FPO. Yeah. It was India's largest FPO. But one never knew that it would become the biggest headline.
The biggest headline, the biggest newsmaker for all kinds of reasons. Now, the quota reserved for the non-institutional and institutional investors was subscribed fully earlier today, while the employee and retail quota received 51 and 11% bids respectively. So clearly they were completely out of the running here. Out of the 20,000 crore rupee proceeds from the FPO, 10,869 crores will be used for green hydrogen projects, existing airports, and construction of a greenfield expressway. An amount of 4,165 crore rupees will be utilized for repayment of debt.
All right, let's go across to Avinash Gorakhshar, Director Research at Profit Mart Securities. Avinash, welcome to the show. The markets really seem to have continued to see a big sell-off in the Adani pack. But the FPO is done and dusted. Of course, retail subscription isn't what has made it sail through. It's the big institutional buyers. Your first take on the completion of this FPO?
Yeah, I think my sense is I think the FPO has been subscribed largely because of some support, from the institutional investors. Especially, we have been hearing from the markets that a lot of family offices, of large corporate houses have actually subscribed, to the institutional portion, and that has actually helped them cover up the shortfall which came about from the retail quota. My sense is I think it's a good development considering the kind of lot of negative news flows we heard about the Adani group companies in the past few days. And I think this should give a little bit of fillip to the market sentiment, and things should look going ahead quite better. More importantly, institutional investors coming on board, Siddharth, is definitely a good point because that adds to the maturity and the credibility of the company. Earlier, we had seen that not many domestic funds had actually invested in the Adani group companies. So to that extent, it's a kind of a silver lining, and I think this should be taken positively by the markets.
Avinash, that's a good point where you speak about earlier not many domestic institutions had invested. Do you have visibility into who are the domestic institutions who have now sort of opened their account or rebooked through the Adani FPO?
I think, see, I would not be able to give you confirmed names, but what we have been hearing is that a lot of family offices run by typically Zydus, Ambani, as well as by, Sunil Mittal family have actually subscribed to this offer. Most importantly, on the domestic side, we are going to see a lot of FI interest also. Names like, Morgan Stanley, names like, typically Aditya Birla Mutual Fund. These are some names which have actually given their, given their, allocation for this stock. So my sense is once the final names do come out, Siddharth, you will be, all of us will be in a better position to comment. But definitely this time it looks as if the institutional community has given a lot of support for Adani Enterprises. And I think that is a good beginning because considering the kind of hard assets this group has put in the country,
right.
it's really difficult to believe that, everything is in thin air. So definitely, I think good point.
Abha, I just wanted to, before we go across to Anand Tandon, market expert, just for the sake of our viewers to understand this, and that's a question we should ask our experts on the show, where we'll try and dissect the FPO, how it has happened, what changed in the beginning and how it finally concluded. Just in terms of the numbers, the non-institutional part of it subscribed 3.43x, and that was a very significant amount of bidding. The QIB portion, both the institutional and otherwise, above 1, but the retail just 0.11. So, and the employees also just 0.54. Abha, as Anand, I just want to ask you this quick point. Okay, Rahul Arora, CEO of Nirmal Bang Equities. Rahul, welcome. Big day for the Adani Group. The 20,000 crore IPO has gone through, and for the first few hours or maybe a day, day and a half, things seemed a bit skittish. Your first response and an added comment from you on the point that I have to ask you. If the Adani Group was going ahead with such a large fundraising exercise, the fact that retail hasn't participated and it is institutional investors of different sorts who have ultimately pushed it through, what is the significance of that, Rahul?
Thanks for having me, Siddharth. So I think as a group, we don't track too many of the stocks of that house. Of course, we do track ACC Ambuja very closely. So, we don't really have a stated position on the FPO as such. But I think to your limited point of the issue actually going through, I think it was extremely important from a capital market perspective, given the news flow that was surrounding it. So had it not gone through, obviously, it would have been a bit of a problem from a capital market standpoint and from a confidence standpoint. But I think the fact that they managed to push the issue through, I don't have the details on who the final bidders are. I think till yesterday, I think they had about 9,500 crores worth of interest that was already signed in. I think 6,000 crores that came through the anchor book, and I think another 3,500 crores that had come in through an Abu Dhabi-based investor. So obviously, I think as you were rightly pointing out, I'm not sure how much of it has actually come through at the employee and retail level. This seems like
employees 13.38 crore. Rahul, sorry to interrupt you. Just since you asked those numbers, and then I'll go across. Abha has a question for you. For employees, it's 13.38 crore. This is the last update that I have. I must point out to our viewers, the retail book closes at 5 p.m. We'll get that data hopefully later on while we are having this chat. The retail portion, individual retail, is just under 384 crore. As far as the NII part is concerned, it is 5,129 crore. I'm rounding it off. The QIB institutional is 2,039 crore, 38 crore. And the QIB, which is the anchor book, is 2,992.45 crore. Abha.
I guess a bigger question here, and we've got Devin Chokshi, Anand Tandon, Rahul Arora, Avinash Gorakhsakar all with us to discuss this, is really what this is going to mean for the markets, for the retail investor. Anand, let me bring you in here. Clearly, retail investors have given this a miss, right? And we've hardly seen any interest from employees, and this was something...
Abha, I'm not able to hear your voice at all.
Okay, all right. We'll come back to you, Anand. Give us a moment. We'll fix that line. But Rahul, let me come back to you. You just heard the numbers as well. Retail has given this a miss, and the group was really counting on interest from public investors. They've not gotten this. This is clearly a bailout that's come in at the nth hour. A 20,000 crore FPO that has somehow managed to slide through at the last minute for a group that's talking about 100 billion in expansion over the next 10 years. What is this going to mean for the Adani Group companies now?
So I think the plus point is that the money is in the bag. I think, we can probably dissect over a period of time as to who the investors are. And I mean, if that's of any academic interest. But the fact is that I think the significance of the fact that the issue has gone through and gone through at such a precarious time, I think it's an exercise in itself that needs to be acknowledged. I think, obviously, I'm not entirely sure about whether the last word on both sides of this whatever you want to call it, saga, so to speak, is done. I still think we're pretty much in the midst of it. So it's anyone's guess as to which way, we head. But I think, like I said, there are some parts of the group where the prices have started to look very, very attractive, where there are some very solid assets underlying. Whether you look at the ports business or the cement business, I think the recently acquired businesses of ACC and Ambuja, I think have come down to fairly attractive levels. But like I was telling Siddharth, I think, unfortunately, we don't really have a stated position on most of the Adani Group stocks because we only look at ACC and Ambuja from within that, and we've been tracking it since before the acquisition. But like I said, I think it's important that the issue has gone through. It would have been a bit jittery had it not gone through. And obviously, it'll probably be debated as to who, you could debate who's put in the money, who's not put in the money. But I think at least in these times, that the fact that they've managed to push it through, I think that itself is definitely worth a mention.
So, in fact, Avinash was going through the list of the non-institutional and the QIB investors, and I'll bring him back in a moment. But also wanted to bring in Devin on this. And Devin, we spoke when the Hindenburg report had come out and when the markets had this complete shakedown. And I'm curious because about 10,000 crores of this money is going to go towards the expansion. They've been talking about how this is linked to the India story, the growth story, and how they're building infrastructure for the long term, really refuting any allegations that have come their way. Do you see any lingering impact? Because the group has definitely taken a monetary hit.
Well, I think look at it from this angle that the businesses of the company haven't changed from yesterday to today. On the contrary, if at all any kind of a positive move is to be seen, I think these businesses are becoming more stronger as the infrastructure projects gets implemented. If you are having about $8 billion worth of EBITDA across the group companies, and if you are in a position to service the debt of $30 billion with $4 billion worth of cash in the balance sheet, I don't think that one should be alarmingly raising any kind of issue on the business prospect per se. The businesses remain absolutely strong, absolutely convincing, and I think that should be the lookout for the investors. Second most important point which I am trying to draw between the trader and the investor. The trader basically looks at the opportunity for the shorter period of time, and I think that is his role, that is his business. I think that is what he does in the market. As an investor, you are in insurance company, sovereign fund, pension fund, family offices, endowment fund, whatever you are, infrastructure fund. You are investing these particular funds for a 15 to 25-year period. And based on the infrastructure projects, I think, which are executed and cash flow that they are generating, this is where I think you are basically more comfortable. In this entire proposition, I find that I think that is an underlying strength as far as I think the investment proposition is concerned. So honestly speaking, I think I don't want to apply my mind beyond the point. Call it, I think, some kind of technical movement which had to happen in the market has happened. Whatever I think the situation hereafter would be, I think that somebody can probably evaluate it better. But I would like to think that investment proposition remains absolutely strong and convincing in this case.
Deven, I'll come back to you on that point, but I want to bring in Shaheen Mukadam, market expert, who is here with us. We will also have Anand Tandon as well. Shahina, the broader point in terms of the FPO panning out is very clear. The company management had come on our channel, Abha, and made it very clear that because the FPO sort of rules allow them, they are going to rely on institutional buyers, and that's what has actually panned out very clearly. Speakers before you, Shahina, have said that this is in a way a vote of confidence for the Adani Group and its stock. Do you agree with that view?
Well, I would say it is a relief that the issue has gone through. Obviously, the anchor book was there in place, and, the HNIs also were in place. So I think that gave the confidence for the Adani Group to say that the issue will go through. I would say it is a relief, because if it hadn't gone through, it would have had a very negative spiral both on the market, of course, and of course the Adani Group stocks. So this has sort of given them a relief, and I would say investors as a whole a relief that this issue has gone through. But I would not say that the stock prices of the Adani Group, this is like, okay, this is bottomed out and it's going to be one way up. I think fundamentals definitely are going to be in play. The issues raised by various international reports, they are going to be questioned, and investors will look at valuations before adding on more money. These are institutional investors that have put in their money, who look at 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But I think the retail investors will be well advised to be cautious, because even as you know, the closing price was below the upper end of the band, which most of the issuers subscribed at.
Absolutely. Let me go back across to Avinash for a moment. Avinash, you really dug up that list in terms of the kind of institutions that came in at the last moment. And I'm just going to request you to just take some of those names again, and also ask you whether that gives you further confidence to look at some of these stocks, or would you wait on the sidelines to see what transpires in the next few weeks?
I think, Abha, the main challenge in the near term for the Adani Enterprises FPO was to collect the money, and I think 50% of the money was asked on application. So I think that job being done. I think now most of these companies would focus on their fundamentals, on their businesses, and the markets would also look at numbers going forward. So my sense is that at least in the near term, this crisis has been managed very well by the Adani management. Finally, institutional investors have saved the issue. There's no doubt about it. Retail investors would definitely come in, once the companies start delivering better numbers. And I think in terms of fundamentals, although valuations seem to be pricey, they are not cheap. My sense is that, this correction is obviously a good time for investors who want to take a 2 to 3 year call. So typically, investors who have come in now, like, of course, these are reported names. I don't have authenticated, confirmations, but lot of family offices who have invested in this in this FPO are definitely going to stay invested for the next, say, 2 to 3 years. So these are not fly by night operators.
Right.
These are long term investors who definitely see value.
Okay, Rahul, I want to come to you on a broader point and not on this specific company or the FPO. There are people and international commentary that I am talking about, which is saying that the recent report is going to force global investors to ask whether Indian stocks deserve their lofty valuations. There is, of course, a valuation question surrounding and the PE ratios of all of these companies. But the broader point, Rahul, do you agree with that take that this will force a rethink?
No, Siddharth, I don't think that this can be extrapolated to that extent. To your limited point on whether valuations are in excess of where they should be fundamentally, that point can be made standalone. I think even before any of this started, I think there was no question in anyone's mind that valuations were probably ahead of themselves. And, I think the market probably needed a reason to correct. This was probably the reason. It was, I think, more than price to perfection. You can see the results, reactions to some of the stocks. You can look at a Dixon Technologies or a Gale, or even a Bajaj Finance when they came out with their provisional numbers a couple of weeks back. The market hasn't taken too kindly to a lot of these things. So I think the fact that you were more than price for perfection, there was just some reason that the market needed to probably readjust itself. Has that process of adjustment been completely done? I still think there could be a little bit more to go on the way down. I still think that valuations aren't really aligned to where they should be, because we still haven't felt the full economic impact of the interest rate hikes that we've seen in the US and India, right? So I think we're sort of getting stuck up in what's happened over the last few days, but there's a much bigger story at play globally. And the impact that's going to have on global growth and on GDP, and therefore on resultant earnings as well. So to that extent, I think your point is well made and well taken, Siddharth, that valuations were definitely ahead of themselves. But is this the reason why, or can this be extrapolated to other Indian companies? I don't think so. I think Siddharth, we research about 185 companies at our broking house, and I think you'll find when we interact with companies, and this would be true of your interactions as well, Siddharth. By and large, the corporate governance in India is very pristine. I think if you look at most of the companies, the kind of regulations you have, the kind of effort that SEBI, RBI, etc., the regulatory bodies have done, I don't think there's too much room to, make that argument, so to say. So I think whatever is probably playing out will probably play itself out in natural course, but I would not extend that line of argument to say that valuations need to correct because of anything that has happened. Standalone, yes, and I think that process of adjustment is anyway underway.
Rahul made a very interesting point, Abha, about pristine corporate governance. We'll try and come back to you on that because I want to press that point. But Anand Tandon, hopefully, I'm going to give it a shot now. Hopefully, you can hear me, Anand. The question that I have for you, and I'm sure you want to comment about the FPO, but I want to start by saying that the Adani linked shares actually helped drive India's world-beating rally, the stock market rally. There's no doubt about that. And in some ways, they have now contributed to dragging down India's stocks, and we could be amongst the biggest laggards in this recent phase. Where does the market head from here, Anand?
So, I don't know whether the market view can be based only on the performance of one group. Yes, it had been a rank outperformer, and some of the group stocks were definitely among the top performers over the last 1 year before the current collapse. But that said, I think, the overall situation that we are in, as I heard, I think Rahul it was who mentioned just now that the market was actually priced at the higher end of where it could have been. And I think with rising interest rates, you are going to have to expect a compression in the valuation levels. To some extent, I would argue that it's still not done, because even now you continue to see companies trading at 60 to 70 times earnings, which if you were to look at before we kind of went into a huge flow of money, used to trade at maybe 35, 40. Look at any of the FMCG or consumer-oriented stocks. That's where they were. So once you got back to not having a fiscally repressed or an interest rate suppressed kind of situation, you would expect the valuations to come back. Now, part of that will be because of a fall in prices. Part of it will be because earnings growth will catch up over a period of time. But overall, I think the market was correcting for the fact that interest rates have to move up and, and perhaps stay up for a longer period than people are willing to admit. And I think that's what we have seen. I think to some extent it has corrected. Perhaps some more is left to happen, which we should expect to see over the next few months.
Okay. Devan, you've sounded very confident of the Adani story. Every time we've spoken with you, you've said there are no holes. The books seem to suggest very strong balance sheets, cash on books, as you were just talking about as well. The big question that came up when we thought the FPO was going to go bust was that where are they going to get the money to fund both their expansion plans, very ambitious expansion plans, as well as repay debt? That question kind of remains, Devan, because they had a whole gamut of IPOs for some of the other group companies lined up over the next few years. Does that now hang in the balance? Do you have any concerns around that? Because while, of course, the markets are not dependent on one group, considering, as we just discussed, the scale and size of some of their ambitions and capex that's been discussed, it could have a significant hit.
So let me make an observation here.
Yeah.
While I agree that I think 20,000 crore worth of issue is a large issue as far as India is concerned. But from the global balance point of view, we are talking about only $2.5 billion worth of money.
Okay.
And I think when you look at the size of your insurance company like LIC, if you look at, I think, the size of all your mutual fund equity schemes put together, you would probably not give so much of weightage to this 20,000 crore. Though it's a big money, you will not give so much of weightage to it because I think the size of the industry has also grown big.
Okay.
Today, the SIP flow into the country on a monthly basis in itself, I think, is close to equal to, I think, the kind of money that we are talking about, I think, raising in this FPO. So, frankly speaking, I would think that, I think, yes, I think there is a fund flow available into the system. Maybe, I think, on a standalone basis, this issue looks larger, which is fair. No issues on that. Second point, I think, if I want to make an observation here, I think I was listening to the argument on the valuation. In my viewpoint, I think the valuation is made out of two or three things. First of all is earnings agreed. Second most important part, I think, is basically because of perception. And the third part of the valuation is liquidity.
Sure.
We'll have to accept one fact that in India markets, the promoters hold significantly large chunk of shares compared to the Western markets. So liquidity in the free float is going to be always tight. And there is going to be a premium attached to this particular free float as far as the valuation is concerned. Another point for infrastructure assets, I think the valuation, like FMCG companies of past, I think will always remain high. For a simple reason that I think globally investors invest their money at 80 rupees to $1. And I think infrastructure assets get created in the country, which is for a longer period of 25, 50 years. In such kind of a situation, I think this valuation is justified to remain expensive because I think the globally money power is, I think, extremely high to buy into such kind of assets. So maybe I think I'm of the view that in India we'll have to accept few facts that the valuation will remain high because our growth program is on a higher side. And at the same time, I think the kind of opportunity that these companies are providing for investors globally is far higher. Maybe today another angle to look at, I think if somebody has shorted these infrastructure assets, probably I think with an idea that at lower price had they bought this particular asset, their payback period would have been much faster. I guess this is the point which will probably now get into the circulation in the minds of the analyst hereafter. We'll attach higher premium to such kind of assets which are having visibility to generate better profits on a sustainable basis.
Devan, I want to follow up what you have said, and you had told Abha something that it keeps coming to me throughout this FPO saga, which was where Devan had said that they might either have to extend the issue or reduce the price. That didn't happen because institutions jumped in. But the larger question that I want to ask you, Devan Chokse, is that given the, and they have given, let me put this on record, a 413-page reply to Hindenburg's 100-odd page questions, 88 questions. The question that I have for you, Devan Chokse, is does the Adani Group need to further clarify beyond what it has said on the issue of offshore investment vehicles, the manner in which some of these investments have been made, the questions that have been raised, allegations really around offshore entities, shell entities. Is there more work that the Adani Group has to do to reassure the public at large and investors on that specific aspect of the Hindenburg allegations?
So Siddharth, I'm glad that I think you touched upon this particular point. I think I have two things to submit here. If at all Adani Group has to give further explanation to this, who should be asking for this particular explanation? Should it be regulator or should it be a trader? If the regulator asks for this particular explanation, justified, because regulator has to manage this entire market in a systematic manner.
Yes.
Should a trader ask for this clarification? Answer may be yes, but I think is the trader giving enough amount of transparency? Is trader giving a transparency that why he shorted that non-Indian traded instruments, that too in the overseas market, when I think the traded market was available in India? Is trader giving that answer? Trader is not giving that answer. Is trader giving an answer that who are the investors behind this fund? Who has basically given this money for shorting this particular stock? Is the trader giving answer? Answer is not available. So in my viewpoint, I think when the trader himself is not providing any kind of transparency, how is he justified in bringing further amount of questions for building further transparency? And if at all, I think that transparency is required in form of information, let it be asked by the regulator. Indian markets are fairly regulated.
Should the
regulator ask this question, it is fair enough.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to clarify this point because you are making a very important point. Should the regulator have done more? And I'm saying this from the point that you are making. The regulator regulates the markets and is supposed to protect the interests of every single market participant who is registered, lawful, legally participating in the markets. Has the Indian regulatory system done enough when it comes to these allegations?
I would think that I think whatever the framework under which regulator has sought this information has been provided by the company. Whether I think they could have asked further more information, I would leave it to regulators. It is their prerogative. But I would definitely ask regulator that why I think the non-traded Indian instruments which are operating outside the country be allowed to be shorted and be allowed to create this kind of havoc. I think this question, I think the regulator will have to field after a while now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rahul, let's bring you in on this as well. I mean, and you know, let's leave out a specific stock for a moment, but talk about this as best practice, because this issue is not going away. It's going to come out. We're anticipating the budget session of Parliament, and I'm sure we're going to hear more about this. Already during the economic survey, you know, there was a comment that was made by the chief economic advisor saying this is related to a specific stock, but this was fielding off a whole variety of questions, and he said the same thing, that you know, this is something for the regulators to manage. Are we looking for further answers here?
So I think, you know, Ava, this is obviously, I think while the discourse has been dominated by what's been happening, I think, you know, the Indian markets are a much bigger place to be than just a handful of stocks. And I think to that extent, I think, you know, life in many which ways has largely moved on, as the point has been made on your show as well. You know, there's a predominantly a large part of them are non-Indian institutional investors that have put in money into the FPO. So at least when we talk to our clients, you know, the discourse is pretty much centered around the cement assets, like I said, or maybe you know, the key infrastructure assets that they have. But beyond that, I think life to a large extent, especially for the domestic institutional investors, has moved on. You know, there is a full-fledged earnings season that's underway, and you know, for fund managers in a market like this, to be obsessed by just 4 or 5 stocks can be extremely suicidal. We have probably the biggest event of the year coming up in just about 12 hours from now, or even sooner. So I think there are other fish at play. I think, you know, I would not extrapolate anything out of this saga to question the ethics or the integrity or the transparency of the Indian market. I think we're in extremely fine fettle. I think the quarterly disclosures, you know, I think Siddharth and Abha, you know, if you go back 10 years and you saw how companies used to declare their results, today, every company, when they declare their results, they actually put out their audited financial statements and a corporate presentation simultaneously. This didn't happen a decade back. So there is immense amount of transparency. There is segmental breakup that companies are giving you. There are, you know, ad nauseum cash flows that you can go through. Right. Historical financials that companies themselves are providing. So I think the kind of information you have available to you to make an informed decision, I think, you know, again, I'm not commenting on this one group or one entity. Like I said, I have my knowledge on this is particularly restricted. But I think when we look at the Indian market as a whole and to try and extrapolate this, I think is a bit of a stretch. I think, you know, there are almost 5,000 listed securities in India. in any given group, barring the Tatas, you'll have 5 or 6 companies that are listed. So I think beyond a point, I think there's no point obsessing about a group of companies. I think there's a much larger play to be made here. Valuations have come down in so many stocks in so many sectors, right? We've discussed a few already. As a retail investor,
let me bring in Shaina as we run out of time on the show. Shaina, the point that's really been made, and the company has also told us that Adani Enterprises is now an incubator and future value unlocking will happen. But one quick point, Shaina, before I let Abha conclude, which is a simple question. Do you think after this fundraising exercise, it reduces the debt also? Is the Adani Group over-leveraged in the context of its operating metrics and its business footprint?
Yes, I think they're over leveraged, and that is precisely the issue that has actually, plagued in terms of what sort of valuation we should give this company. Because one, in terms of valuation, it is most of the financial parameters, it is the stock prices are expensive, and on the other hand, it is highly leveraged. Now, the issue over here is what part of this fundraise, 20,000 crores, will go towards repayment of debt or towards new businesses. So to that extent, I think, we'll have to relook at the fundamentals. If this a large chunk of this money goes towards new businesses, then the fundamental issue of being over leveraged is going to remain. But now, as Rahul said, this is one particular group which is able to pull through these issues and maintain the high multiples based on the limited liquidity in the stocks that is available in the market. So I think to that extent we cannot really comment that it's a very high P stock, so it should correct, etc. It's a separate issue by itself. So I would we just have to take it as is and move ahead, I think.
All right. So clearly a couple of key questions that have emerged as consensus, I think, from all our guests. Devan Choksi, Rahul Arora, Anand Tandon, Shaina and Avinash, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on what's happened with the FPO, the impact on markets, what's next for Adani Group stocks, and also from a regulatory standpoint, what kind of questions should perhaps be asked. Gautam Adani is close to becoming the second richest man in the country. The Hindenburg explosion singed the billionaire so badly that he has fallen off the global top 10 list. From almost at the top of the list, he's actually slipped a fair few points. That full report coming up after the break.
It's no longer a sea, but an ocean of love. The unmeasurable love that he received on a Sunday evening as he stepped out from his Mannat balcony to greet his fans. These images are a proof that he's still the King Khan of Bollywood, the Badshah of Indian cinema, and in fact even the Pathaan of box office. That's right, he came and not just conquered, but also took the global box office charts by storm. And how? Pathaan has scripted history by becoming the first ever Hindi film to cross 500 crore worldwide in just 5 days.
अपनी कुर्सी की पेटी बांध लो, मौसम बिगड़ने वाला है.
A feat only superstar Shah Rukh Khan and his film could achieve, giving another reason why he's still the most loved, undisputed, and the last of superstars. Not a single city, or should we just say the world, could hold itself back from joining in to celebrate SRK as he made his comeback with Pathaan after a hiatus of almost 5 years. And this sheer love for him perhaps is what even made it a super blockbuster in the history of Hindi cinema, finally breaking the drought of mega hits for Bollywood despite all the boycott calls and controversies surrounding this Siddharth Anand directorial. The film has become the highest grosser in the spy universe, surpassing the lifetime collection of Hrithik Roshan's Star of War, which stands at rupees 475 crores. It has also surpassed the collection of Salman Khan's Tiger Zinda Hai, which ended at 564 crores. What's more, Pathaan has even beaten the Hindi version of KGF Chapter 2, Bahubali 2,
हमारे भगवान अमरेंद्र बाहुबली का रक्त हो तुम जय महेशमती
and Dangal to become the fastest film to hit 250 crore rupees at domestic box office. After reaching the milestone, SRK on day 5 showed up at his balcony to greet his fans gathered outside his residence, Mannat. Whereas overwhelmed by immense love received for Pathaan, Deepika Padukone visited Gaiety Galaxy Theatre to witness fan reactions. A day before this, SRK also interacted with his fans on Twitter, and while the blockbuster success of Pathaan is undoubtedly a reminder how much the audience loves cinema and above all Shah Rukh, the modest superstar, however, called his co-star Salman Khan the GOAT with utmost humility when a fan during our SRK session told him he cannot beat his record at the box office. Entertainment Bureau, India Today.
Golden Globe goes to Natu Natu, RRR.
This is the roar of Indian cinema on the world stage. A global dance party and the biggest validation for India's soft power. S.S. Rajamouli's epic action drama has done what no Indian film has done before. With its sheer technical and creative talent, RRR has made a huge leap towards global domination when it comes to Indian entertainment. The world can't get enough of Natu Natu. And these images are proof. The tickets to this show of RRR at Chinese Theatre in Los Angeles sold out in flat 98 seconds. Who would have thought that a fictitious story about two legendary revolutionaries would have the world go crazy? Even school kids in California put up this performance. This mind-boggling frenzy has swept across the 7 seas, from Los Angeles to Japan.
English, Japanese, and you repeat after me.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
Namaskaram. Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. Ohayou gozaimasu.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
Even the other Asian global export, the K-pop stars, were not left untouched by the magic of RRR. For the longest time, Hindi cinema defined India's soft power. Movies set in Europe, UK and America were targeted at the NRI audience. But New India is dreaming big. And RRR's roaring success shows this is just the beginning for Indian cinema to expand its horizon further. Bureau Report, India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Welcome back. Gautam Adani was close to becoming the second richest man in the country. The Hindenburg explosion has singed the billionaire so badly that he has fallen off that global top 10 rich list. Mukesh Ambani is just a couple of $1 billion below Gautam Adani, and given the loss in market cap of Adani shares today, it's all set to overtake his fellow Gujarati by tomorrow.
It's one race the country loves to track. The race of wealth between the country's two richest industrialists. For the past few months, Gautam Adani has led the hustings by a wide margin. But now Mukesh Ambani is all set to edge him out. Till a couple of months ago, Gautam Adani was the second richest man in the world. And the pace of the rise in his net worth was such that he was expected to be the world's richest very soon. This was what he had to say in an exclusive interview to the India Today group.
These rankings and numbers do not matter to me. These are only media hype. I'm a first generation entrepreneur who had to build everything from scratch. I get my thrills from handling challenges, and the bigger they are, the happier I am.
The last week of January has seen his fortunes turn. The Adani Group chairman is poorer by around 2,80,000 crore rupees in the past 1 week. Gautam Adani was worth $150 billion in September, just below Elon Musk in personal wealth. At the beginning of this year, his net worth had slipped to $121 billion. As of today, his wealth has been slashed to $84 billion, thanks to the impact of the Hindenburg report. He's just $2.2 billion or 18,000 crore rupees richer than Mukesh Ambani, a gap likely to be plugged by the end of the day today. Behind this spectacular fall in fortunes is a slide in the share prices of the Adani Group companies. The group has 10 listed companies. Since Thursday, when the Hindenburg report first appeared, the group has lost 5,65,000 crore rupees in market capitalization. The fall is led by Adani Total Gas, which is down nearly 2 lakh crore rupees. Adani Green Energy and Adani Transmission have also lost more than 1 lakh crore in value. Adani Enterprises, which is currently raising 20,000 crore rupees via an FPO, is down 53,000 crore rupees.
One of
According to the Hindenburg report, the stock price of 7 listed companies of the group.
That's all we have for you on the show today. Thanks so much for watching.
How do you respond? Are these charges that are should be investigated? Have they been investigated? Or do you believe Hindenburg has brought out something new?
As a research analyst, I must commend the Hindenburg report because they have made a persuasive argument, fully